Although I know I said that the last video was the final video in this editing series, I've realized that there's actually another step that I need to step you through, and that last step is the evaluation phase. Anytime you are working on something that you are being intentional with, it's really good to step away, come back to your work with fresh eyes, and then experiment and evaluate what you have to make sure that you are happy with your final decision. So what I'm going to show you now is what I do sometimes when I want to experiment with other styles of edit. Now I'm really happy with this piece. This piece is capturing that feel that we wanted to capture. We wanted to capture Miss Price's bubbly, happy, feminine personality. We've got a lovely setting. I like the light, I like the color, but I was thinking about that blue tone that I added in last night and seeing, well, maybe I want to experiment with that a little bit more. Maybe it's a little bit too golden. And then I wanted to show you how you can re-edit your image with a completely different look and evaluate the style to see which one fits the vision you're going for the most. So what I've done over here on my layers panel, you'll see I've created 3 folders. So the benefit of doing the cleanup layer separately is that you can duplicate this layer, convert it to a smart object, and edit it in as many styles as you want. So I've made 3 folders just to show you 3 different things that I have quickly experimented with. This first edit is the one that you've seen me complete. I've got the overlay, I've got my color layer, and I've got that cleanup layer, which is not in the folder. So that's the end of the folder right here. I've turned the blue off for this one. So that's my first edit here, that golden layer. Now I've created another folder, if I turn this one on, adding back in the blue. So I've added in the blue layer here, and I have added in, whoops, I'm not sure what that folder is in there. Let me just turn that off. I'm going to delete that because that shouldn't be there. I think I accidentally duplicated that. So in here, I've turned on the blue. So the blue is on. It has been, I've played with the opacity, brought it down on soft light just to soften that gold a little bit. And I've also gone back into my Camera Raw filter by double clicking on this, opening it up, and I have gone to my adjustment brush and added vignette. Oops, wrong tool. So you'll see up here I've got this pin. So this pin up here, all I've done, if I click on this, you'll see I've reduced the exposure. Okay, and I've upped the whites a little bit to make sure it's still glowing. But what I've done is I'm going to leave it at -55, but if I just go a bit further, you'll see I'm creating that vignette effect. But the benefit of doing it with the adjustment brush rather than in the basic panel is that you can control exactly the shape of it. So I'm going to leave it there. That's where I'm happy with it. So I've experimented with this edit in this folder. I actually also realized that if I drop the opacity of the whole folder just a little bit, I quite liked it. So you can blend 2 different edits together to see what that looks like as well. So this one is just softening that gold a little bit and adding a vignette. And now the next thing that I did was create a completely different edit. I thought I'd just try a different style, see what happens and whether I like it. So I'm going to open up this folder and show you what's in here first before I turn it on. So in here, I have duplicated, I've copied the cleanup layer. I have added a red, I'll turn it on so you can see. Here we go. I've duplicated, turn these all off. I've duplicated this cleanup layer, and by duplicating it, it's given me a clean slate. I'll show you how to do this in a minute. I have then converted it to a smart object, added the Camera Raw. Now if I double click on the Camera Raw, I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through what I've done. I did not use a preset for this one. This one I have just adjusted sliders. I thought I'd go for a more vintage green tinge, more contrasty, a bit like an old Fujifilm camera. So if I drop the green tint, I've upped the warmness just a little bit, included the contrast, I've made it bright by upping the highlights and the whites and reducing the shadows, upped the vibrance just a little bit. I think I played with the tone curve in this one. This is one of those sort of S curves. I've made it a bit brighter. You'll see if I pull that up or down, it will, change the brightness. I'll just leave that where it was. I haven't touched anything in sharpening. I did play this time with the green. I changed the hue of the green. I wanted it to be far greener, but I did drop the saturation. So you'll see I've dropped the saturation, but I've changed the hue. And then I did add I didn't use a preset, sorry. Up here to the adjustment brush, I did add that light on Miss Price here by increasing the whites, dropping the clarity a little bit to give it that soft look. However, it's a completely different style of edit. Now this is very strong. This is a very strong edit. So what I've done is click OK. I want it to be a little softer than that. And by double clicking over here on these icons, I've just dropped the opacity of the filter. So that's up to 100%. That's the original. And I think it was about 68, wasn't it, that I set it on, that I thought looked quite nice. Click OK with that. Now that's lovely. I thought I'd experiment with an overlay. I quite like this, could leave it just as is, but I wanted to show you one of these overlays. Now I added a red tone. Okay, now this is completely optional. In fact, I'd probably, even though it's on 20%, drop it down a little bit more, just a little bit of a tone, because red and green are complementary colors, and I thought it might be good to show you how it could work. I'll leave it back where it was. Oh, that'll do. And these are some overlays that I wanted to show you. So this is the kind of vibe, if you're going for that vintage look, that a grain I thought could be interesting to use. So here's a couple that I've got. This is like an old film photo overlay. Okay, really quite grainy. If I bring up the opacity, you can see here. Okay, if I change the blending mode back to normal, it's just a scan. It's a scan of an old, some grain. Now this is multiply. Screen doesn't work because it's already white. So we go, screen works on black, multiply works on white. So click on multiply, adjust the opacity. Now I didn't end up liking that one, so I have added on this one. Now this is old school film grain, but instead of just using a grain filter like is in the Camera Raw, this one has a little bit more texture. So I've only got it on 45, but I'll bring it back up to 100 and take it off back onto normal, and you can see the texture here. So I thought I'd just have a play with that one. Now this one needs to go to screen because it's predominantly black. I think that's too strong, so I just sort of dropped it back. Now the thing with these textures that are uneven is you've got to be aware of elements that might be distracting. Now I'm going to zoom into the shadows so you can see this grain. Now let's say if I'm looking at it from here, okay, I'm going to Control T to move it around. This little dot is annoying me, this little white dot right here. So I know that's a piece of, and it's a piece of film grain. That's part of the look that you're going for. Might move it back down, but it's too strong for me. So what I'm going to do is get rid of it with our lovely content aware fill. Now in order to do that, I need to make sure that I am using, I rasterize the image. So I have to right click over here and click on rasterize, and now I can edit this. I'm going to get my lasso tool, go around it, edit, fill, content aware fill, and there we go. And it has cleaned up that little distracting piece of grain there. Then I thought I'd throw on one of those light effects as well. Now this one is a different one. It's got a bit of color in it because the edit that I'm going for is different. So I'll just leave that there where it was. And this is a different look altogether. And it is quite nice, you know. I think adding that little bit of red there makes it that pink pop out, but some people might like it like this. Again, it's totally personal taste. But let's say I have all of these in my green and contrasty folder. I'm going to close that up. Now let's say I wanted to try a different style. This is the way that I would do it. First thing, I'm going to duplicate this cleanup layer. I'll turn all of these off. Actually, I'll leave them on so you can see. Duplicate this cleanup layer. So there's two ways of duplicating. Right click. Actually, there's a whole bunch of ways. This is just an easy way. It's locked, so I'm going to unlock it. Right click, duplicate layer. And I'm going to call this, I'll call it edit for color. There it is. I'm just going to lock that duplicate layer again, that cleanup layer. I'm going to drag it to the top. I always like the one that I'm working with to be on top. And then right click, convert to smart object. Okay, I'm going to put this in a folder now. Okay, call it edit for. Now I don't know what the look is, so I'm not going to give it a name, and put that in there by clicking and dragging. And this way, anything that I want to do to this image I can have in here. So once I'm here, again, filter, camera raw filter, go in, and experiment. And I'm not going to play around with one of those. I think you can sort of see how that works. But the thing that I want to talk about is evaluating. Now, what I'm going to do is show you what I do after I've got sort of 3 different edits. Now, I've exported these 3 edits. I've exported the golden edit with the blue and the vignette and this contrasty green edit. And what I've done is I like to put it in a PowerPoint. I like to put all 3 here together next to each other. 3 exported files, and I'm just going to play it. Okay, so now I can see all 3 next to each other, except I obviously didn't clean up that grain before. All these little distracting bits I'd probably clean up. But now we're here, I can have a look at these and I can evaluate them all together. This is a time that you might want to ask somebody else their opinion, what they think, keeping in mind that this kind of art is very subjective. And at the end of the day, it depends on the vision that you're trying to go for. Now, this one is definitely not what I was going for. I was not wanting a vintage sort of grainy vibe at all, although it is a different look. It's not my original intention for the shot. I wanted something pastel and something ethereal and really feminine, and both of these fit the bill. So yeah, so this one will give me my final decision. And that is how you experiment with editing, how you set up everything that you need to do, and how you export and evaluate. So for your own photography self-portrait challenge, I'd like you to follow this. If you do different edits, please export them to show me so that I can see the process that you went through. In your artist statement, you are going to have to talk about your process. You are going to have to evaluate your image. So this is a great start to getting your mindset ready to do that. Okay, well, we are done for this series, finally. I hope you enjoyed it, and I can't wait to see what you make. Okay, bye. Now, I know that I said that I had decided on my final image, but I thought I would make one final adjustment. I wasn't going to make this video. I thought, okay, I'll just quickly make this adjustment, but then I thought, no, I'm going to show you the whole process because this is part of making artwork. You look at what you've done and you evaluate it, and then you make changes going forward. So I wanted to show you what I decided that I was going to go back and do. Now, this is the 3 that I exported and showed you in the last video. I'll just put this in slideshow so we can see it larger. Here is the one that I decided would be my final image, this gold edit. I really like this one. But when I was looking at these, creating this PowerPoint for you, I thought, you know what, I really love the gold from this, but I actually love the contrast from this. I think I'm going to go back and add a levels adjustment to this first image to make it a little bit more contrasty, a little bit more pop to those darks. So if I go down to the next line, you'll see the difference here in what I've done. So what I have done is gone in and added a quick levels adjustment to this gold edit just to bring out some of that color and increase that contrast a little bit. And this here is my absolute final image. I'm really happy with that. I'm really happy with how it's turned out, and I don't think I need to change anything anymore. Now, of course, I could continue to fiddle for ages, but after adding a little bit more contrast, and I hope that you can see it. My screen is quite a good screen. If your computer resolution isn't that high, you might not be able to see much of a difference, but I would like to let you know that it definitely is here, and I will show you happily when we get back to school on the big projector. So I'll show you really quickly how I did this. We'll jump back into Photoshop. So here is our golden edit. In our file here, this is the one that I have turned on. All I'm going to do now is add a levels and a curves adjustment to get our final image. So what these are adjustment layers, and I'll step you through how to do that. If I click on levels, you'll see all of a sudden what I've done is I've added some contrast to the image. It's made it a little bit brighter. I hope my disk space is going to hold out here. So what I've done to do that, I'm going to click down here and create levels. And levels is going to pop up here under properties. If you don't have properties, you can go to window and properties. Now under here, you'll see some sliders. These sliders are able to change the darks and the lights. So what I'm going to do is grab this one and drag it to the left, and you'll see it makes it brighter. It's making those whites, that top end, a bit bright. So I'm going to just bring that to the left. And I also brought those blacks up just a little bit here. Okay, not much, but just enough to deepen it. And you'll see the difference here between that and that. All I've done is I've added contrast. I've kept that gold, but I've added some contrast and some depth. I can always adjust the opacity, okay, to find that sweet spot, but I think I'm really happy with that. The next thing that I did was add a curves layer. Now curves we have seen up in Adobe Camera Raw. I could have done this here, but sometimes, you know, at the end you see actually I want to go and add that. So what I've done is exactly the same thing down here. I've gone curves. And now all I've done on this one is soften the blacks a little bit. So this is really contrasty. If I grab this and bring it up just a little bit, if I go too much, you can see it goes white. But I am just softening those blacks just a little bit, and not much at all. In nature, there's very rarely any true black. It's very much always shades of grey. So if I turn that on and off, you'll just see, just to make sure that that soft vibe is still there that I would like. So if I go and turn these off, that was what we ended up with before. Adding in a bit of levels and some curves, maybe even just a little bit less. I do like the contrast, I just don't want it to be pure black. And there we go. That's the final image, something I'm really happy with. I could fiddle around for ages and ages, but I won't. I'm going to leave it there and say that that is the final image, and I'm not going to come back and do any changes after this point. I'm happy with that level of contrast. So you can have a look at this step by step of how I've gone through these processes and how I've evaluated these images in the PDF below. Or you'll see I put them here for you. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, and final. Final is our gold edit with levels adjustment to add a bit of contrast. And there we go. Okay, off you go. Follow along, see what you can make. Thanks, guys.